Hey everybody, it is your host, Melissa Swader with Real Talk, Real Business, with always real people, or at least talking about real people, especially when it comes to podcasting. And that is what today's episode is all about. So there are more and more people who are looking to become podcast hosts. And I don't know if it's the trend that people just want to have their own show or they want to be known for like having a podcast, or if they are strategically developing a podcast for very specific reasons, like, putting time and effort into actually building a show, of creating different series and bringing on different guests. So I just, filmed a short for Instagram, because one of the things that can make or break a podcast show is when you are bringing on your guests and your guests have no experience of actually being in a studio when you are filming, not only on the audio side of things, but also on the video portion of your podcast. A lot of people, especially in the commercial real estate industry, or just people who may be interviewing or have podcast show that are doing them through Zoom. I do know a lot of people who are it's easier just to film in Zoom and then split screen, and that's the way to go. You can also do that in other programs and bring in your guests up to, maybe 5 or 6 guests. I think there are some other platforms and programs that allow you to do that. But we're going to talk about if you are thinking about becoming a guest speaker or you've been invited to be on a podcast show. It can be really nerve-wracking, especially if you've never done it before. But I have seen so many different mistakes when you are a guest coming on to a show that you've never even spoken on, as a guest on a podcast show. So here are some lessons that every podcaster and podcast guest needs to know. First, I'm going to make sure that all you podcasters out there are doing your due diligence to make sure that these guests that you are bringing on have a professional reputation that is in good standing. Because if you are bringing on somebody who is controversial on social media, or somebody who might stand for something that maybe you don't believe in, it could really hurt your brand as a podcaster. So I would recommend to anyone who's thinking about creating a show, a podcast show, or anyone who is looking to bring on different types of guests, just to make sure that you do your research and make sure that their kind of core values also align with your core values, and that you're not jeopardizing your show, because you certainly don't want to be connected to somebody who might potentially bring your podcast into kind of a negative perspective. But the main thing I want to share is these tips for anyone who is thinking about becoming a podcast guest or has been asked to be a podcast guest. Most common mistake is when you are in the room and you are filming your show, the podcast guest has this tendency sometimes to forget to look at their host. And in the beginning of my show, I always make sure that I kind of go over like the little nuances of the technical side of podcasting, because like I said, podcasting is not easy. First, you have to be very fluid. Secondly, you have to just be yourself and be comfortable in front of the camera. And sometimes when especially if you're live, or if I'm live streaming, there are many ways where you can just kind of fumble your words and not even care, just kind of move along, because that is the human behavior. This is who we are. You can't change people making mistakes. It happens all the time. So I don't really get nervous when I'm podcasting or even going live, because I just want people to see who I am and, just the natural flow of the conversation, because this is what we'd be doing at a table, right? Or at a happy hour, or like in an office, or at a lunch. So if you think about that just getting comfortable in front of the camera, it should go really easy for you. But the podcast guest has a tendency, when you tell them, okay, there might be multiple cameras. Like I'm looking at my camera right now, but there might be a side camera like this one. There might be another camera over here. There might also be another camera over here on another stand, another ring light. Like right now, my camera is on a ring light to make sure that I have balanced lighting across, my face and my background. But when there's a guest, sometimes you start looking at the podcast host and then you forget there's an audience. So you have to make sure that you're looking at the camera, because these are the people that you're actually podcasting to. These are the reasons why you're doing the podcast in the first place, right? Is to talk to the audience and to connect with them and let them connect with you. And for maybe whatever you're selling or whatever you're promoting, that is something that you definitely want to make sure you're connecting with them for. So, I gave a really great example of, how I do it in my studio when I'm bringing in guests. And my engineer platform, all my laptop and all the sound, everything is over here, the big computer, and all the mics are in front. So like, for example, if I have my microphone here, I usually have my headset on. And then my guest will sit to my left, and then they'll have their mic and they'll have their headset on. We can hear each other talk, right? And that really creates really great audio, especially if you're using the audio for an audio podcast platform. So sometimes, most of the time, I try to take my audio version of my video and also upload it to my Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, all those, platforms and apps as well for all my audio listeners. But for those who are following my YouTube channel, speaking of which, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe button. If you want to get notified, hit that bell button so you know when there's a new one that I've uploaded. But okay, so say like my guest is over here, and I have asked a question, just something about, your business. Like if I'm interviewing me, for example, I want to know about your business, and I've asked the question, okay, here is how this is done. Okay, so make sure there's two responsibilities you have when you are talking. One, you have to make sure you're looking at your host. And two, you got to make sure that you're looking back at the audience, which is the camera. Because remember, you're talking to the audience, not really the camera. And I know that seems very silly because you're just staring at, your phone or your podcast, or, for example, this comes out. Here, I'm going to show you something. So this comes out. Oh, it turned on. Battery's charged. So you can actually see yourself, for example. That can get really intimidating for some people. That looks weird. Looks like we're being filmed. Put that over there. Sorry. I was like, that was really going to distract me. But if we are in the guest position, here's how I would answer this, okay? Now, I'm the guest, so my host is to my right? Okay, here we go. Hey, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on your show, first and foremost. And my business has been just really exciting. I started back in 1999. I mean, it's really honestly been that long. Hard to believe I am celebrating 25 years this year. Woo woo to me. But it hasn't been easy, let me tell you. But I've always enjoyed working with the small business owners and, even the marketing, departments to help, build brands for small business. I work in real estate, as you may know, and I cover a lot of real estate news, some of which I've probably covered for maybe some of you listeners out there. And then, of course, I really wanted to spend some time just helping people build their own brands online. So I wrote a book. So I'm hoping that might help, other people too, for those who just are new to the business and want to learn how to really promote their business. Yeah, exactly. Yes, I know. It's been really fun, guys. Yeah. So you see how I'm looking, cut. Okay. So you see how I'm looking at my podcast host and I'm also looking at the audience. I want to make sure that I'm sharing my information directly to you and maybe even just throw in a little bit of humor and, promote yourself indirectly. Share some of your accolades to the people so they really understand who you are. Now, I'm sure your podcast host would eventually ask those questions. But anytime that you can share just a little piece of information about you or about your business or something that you may have accomplished along the way, that's when you kind of throw that into your answers. And so if who's a really good example is Tom Brady. If you are a football girl like me, because I love football and everybody knows that, he is a great example of somebody who makes eye contact. So when he is sitting in frame with his co-host, analyst, and they are covering the game, they're sitting in a very narrow window. They're like literally shoulder to shoulder, sitting on two like high top chairs. And they're kind of looking at each other and they're really making eye contact. But Tom Brady is really great at that. He's talking like this with his microphone. He's looking at, his co-host, and then he's making eye contact with the camera. And he's going back and he's agreeing, and he even agrees. And even when his co-host is talking, he's still making eye contact with the camera. He will nod in agreement. Yes, absolutely. Right. Exactly. You nailed it. Kareem Hunt's been putting up some yards and his split between Isaiah Pacheco and, absolutely. Right. So he's constantly looking back and forth, making small little comments in between, his comment to my comment. So it's an interactive show. So you have to think about that in the same way. Keep this podcast interactive. Add your little tidbits, add your little pieces, like your little golden nuggets in between, what he may have or she may have already dropped, and stay interactive, but always make eye contact with the camera. So that's the two things for as a podcast guest. Those are the two things that you really need to pay attention to. Is if you are really nervous and it's your first time, you might want to even practice to make sure you're looking at the camera and make sure you are looking at your host. The one thing you do not want to do, trust me, it's happened, is forget the host. So if you are answering the question and all you're doing is staring at the camera because you are like so focused on the camera, you've completely isolated your podcast host. And I can guarantee, maybe not all, but some hosts will look at the video after the fact, and then they will see how uncomfortable it is that you are not making any eye contact. It's happened to me. I will be sitting here and leaning over, and I'll be talking, and I'll be waiting and I'm leaning over, like, kind of hinting to kind of look at me, and they don't make that eye contact. So, and I said, well, let me stop you. So what about this? What about this? And then I'm like, oh, okay. So I have to ask a couple short little questions to bring them back into me as a host and stay with me in the podcast show. And then, then they can go back to the video. But if you end up doing that, it's very, very possible that the show will get completely wiped from the actual production, because it just isn't a comfortable show to watch because you've completely ignored your host. So whatever you do, don't ignore your host. But the two things you have to do: interact with your host, make sure you make eye contact with the camera, connect with your audience, be yourself, share valuable information, crack a joke here and there. And if you mess up or fumble your words, it's okay. We all do it. And that's the beauty of podcasting, is because it's only you and the people who are watching. And that's how they get to know you. So I hope this helped you, and make sure that you hit that subscribe button, because I'm always leaving really great tips here for anyone. And I'm not like books, giving you the terminologies that marketing professionals use. I'm trying to break it down to you in layman's terms, and how real strategy works and how it all comes together for your business. And you're going to get the best advice here, because I've been in the business for almost 25 years. Actually, yep, 25 years, since 1999. So at the later part of 99, so just a little bit more. But really exciting, guys. Thank you so much for joining Real Talk, Real Business, always about and with real people. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Real Talk, Real Business, Real People. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for more marketing and branding tips. See you next time.